Hi YouTube, it's me, Blondie. Today I'm coming to you with actually a video I've been really excited to share with you all. I mentioned in my first video that I love truly bad, like so bad they're good, or sometimes so bad they're really hard to sit through bad movies. And so I'm going to be sharing with you my top 5 best worst movies. So, because these are actually including some really bad films, I'm going to put them in order of easiest to sit through to ones where I legitimately wanted to get up and leave the room screaming during certain scenes of the film. So, without further ado, I'll get started with the first one in my list. And this is the easiest film to sit through. This was made in 2010, and unlike a lot of the other films in this list, this was clearly intentionally made to be bad. So it was filmed in the style of 70s car chase films, and the movie that I'm talking about, which I own, is Black Dynamite. This movie is fucking great. It features a plethora of actually really famous people. Michael J. White, who played Spawn. You have Arsenio Hall. Just plenty of people, and this movie's so great. It's basically about Black Dynamite, obviously titular character there. And he is a famous pimp, and he finds out that his brother has passed away due to involvement with drugs and the mafia, and basically the whole film is a revenge scheme that leads to some very interesting places. To give you an idea of how bad this movie is, there are actually, if you Google right now, more than one, and by more than one I mean like pages of drinking games for this movie alone. So just think about that. It's And I don't want to really have any of these movies I talk about have a lot of spoilers, because I think some of the best moments in these movies are really those scenes or choices that the actors make that really surprise you. So I'm going to leave a lot of the details in the dark, but it features car chases, kung fu, the Italian mafia. It's absolutely great, and I highly recommend that you give it a watch. The next movie I'm going to talk about is one I actually saw when I was a kid, which is pretty weird considering the rather adult nature of this film. This was released in 1995, and I remember watching it on the channel USA, like public access TV or whatever, with my grandfather. And because the film is pretty raunchy in its like uncut form, they actually did obviously a lot of editing. One of which almost makes the film better if you watch the edited version, because since the film takes place in Las Vegas and centers around dancers and showgirls who are typically topless or wear like pasties and stuff like burlesque dancers, they decided that this was too inappropriate for cable TV. So this in the 90s they photoshopped these like really awkward fuzzy Microsoft Paint-esque like outfits or bras onto the actresses, which look just completely out of place and strange, and it's magical, honestly. But some fun facts about the film. The main actress who plays Nomi Malone is Elizabeth Berkley, and if you're as old as I am, you may know her from Saved by the Bell. This film also features Kyle fucking MacLachlan of Twin Peaks, and he is just his performance is absolutely amazing in this film. And I don't want to give away too much about the film, but probably one of the more entertaining things about it are the sex scenes, because they're just so awkward, and the choices made by the actors and of course by the director and editors, because they kept this in. It's not like, oh, this was the worst take that you can see in the blooper reel. This is what made it to the cutting room floor, however they say. Is a pool sex scene between Elizabeth Berkley and Kyle MacLachlan, which I can only describe as utterly confusing and amazing. And so if you watch this film, or you have watched this film, and you know the scene I'm talking about, please let me know about it down below, because I can't be the only one who was like crying watching this. Um, but I do want to make a quick mention. So as I had said before, when I was a kid, I saw I saw the edited version of this film, and so a lot of things were cutting out, including a pretty serious scene, including sexual assault. And I actually didn't know about this until I watched it later with my friends, the uncut version, because I do own the DVD. So if that's something you're sensitive to, just a heads up, it is pretty serious, so just letting you know about that. The next movie in this list is, if I had to pick a favorite, probably my favorite, and that is Troll 2. This movie came out in 1990, and with a name like Troll 2, you would assume it is a sequel to a movie named Troll. There's actually a movie named Troll that was released in 1986, and this is in fact not the sequel to that. However, to increase the, I guess, marketing value of this movie, they did market it as a sequel to the 1987 film. I'm sorry, 1986 film. But this movie is a national treasure, really. This movie was made by two Italian directors, and some of the more hilarious parts of the film are due to a language barrier between the directors and the English-speaking cast. And there's actually a really great documentary about the whole experience of filming Troll 2 or being in it, called Best Worst Movie, and I believe that this is on Netflix, so you can go look that up and see just kind of all the crazy, kooky facts about stuff that was going on. But basically, in the director's own words, the movie was made because a bunch of her friends had increasingly become vegetarians, and she was not a vegetarian. She became extremely upset by this. So she made a film about goblins that turn people into vegetables and then eat them. Yeah. Honestly, I don't think I could, if I had all the time in the world, accurately describe this film. So I will just end my summation with my favorite quote from quite possibly my favorite actor from the film, and that is, "Oh my God!" Just, if you've seen it, you know what I'm talking about. If not, I'm so sorry. You're probably deaf right now. So the next one on my list has to be Miami Connection. And this movie is probably one of the harder ones to sit through because while Troll 2 is really bad, it's often so bad it's good, where certain parts in Miami Connection are really stagnant and awkward. But overall, I think the movie is definitely worth watching. It has pretty much everything. There are motorcycle riding ninjas, drug dealers, a taekwondo fighting rock band called Dragon Sound. It is just quite an experience of a movie. And this was released in 1987, but actually regained popularity around, I think, 2012, 2010, because Draft House Films re-released it. And I know that I was able to see it on Netflix, and is produced, written by, and starring YK Kim, who is a rather famous member of the Orlando community, and he owned a bunch of Taekwondo studios and wanted to produce a film that really showed the benefits to Taekwondo, honor, discipline, all that sort of stuff. And he created this truly masterful film. What's also kind of funny to note about this film, it's called Miami Connection. From what I remember, there are actually no scenes shot in Miami. There's just some B-roll of like Bayside, if you know where I'm talking about. Most of the film was actually filmed in Orlando and set on the University of Central Florida's campus. And this was, again, back in the 80s, so it looks quite different from what you can see now, but it's worth watching. Another thing that I really like about this film is most films, when going through transitions from scene to scene, do play some music and fade it rather quietly. However, since the film centers around Dragon Sound, which is this Taekwondo practicing band, they play full sets in the middle of the movie. So those are some of the parts where you're gonna have to sit through for a full 3 minutes to just listen to their song about being against ninjas. So the last, and certainly not least, and in fact, if I were to make this list, I had to include this movie, and that is Birdemic, Shock and Terror. This movie was released in 2010 and is described by the creators as a romantic horror film, and it is just amazing. There's also now apparently a sequel, which I haven't seen yet, so I can't attest to how good that is, but if it's made by the same people, I can imagine it is wonderful. Basically, the film starts off following a young sort of worker type who's just trying to find true love and all that sort of thing, and starts off basically like your typical romantic comedy. And then a series of rather strange events begin to happen. And with a name like Birdemic, you know that there are going to be birds in the film. That is going to be one of the central plot points. For some reason, even though their film centers around birds, like in Alfred Hitchcock, The Birds, they chose to, I imagine, spend the smallest amount of their budget on the CGI effects of these birds and not use any real birds in the film, in fact. So what it ends up producing is probably one of the most hilarious films I've ever seen in my entire life. However, I did say I was putting this in order of easiest to sit through to hardest to sit through. There are certain scenes in this movie that you just want to walk away. There's awkwardly long scenes in the beginning of the film, actually, of driving, parking a car, applauding. There are certain things that are just, you gotta muscle through it to get to the good parts. And if you actually don't mind spoilers when learning about a film, JonTron filmed an amazing video talking about Birdemic and actually includes certain clips from the film. And I highly recommend you watch it because it shows some of the best moments of this film, some of the things that make this, rather than a bad movie, a truly terrible masterpiece. So that was my list of my favorite bad movies. Have you seen any of these movies that were on this list? I'm always on the lookout for new bad movies, so please suggest some. Also, since it's the month of October, if you want to suggest any spooky movies, that would be super awesome. So yeah, that's all I had for today. Thanks. Bye!